Let's get this party started, shall we? Outnumbered overtime. OT, baby! Wow, what were you doing? Those are some dance moves.
I was just trying to copy you from the day. That's another story.
We have to have a gathering of you and me where you actually don't bring up that dance video.
I have to. I watch it every time I come. I try to come. I try to come when I come to New York and do the show.
Against God's plan.
I have to check out obviously Harris's video and.
Refresh our memory, Harris.
Nope.
No, I'm sorry.
Nope,
You're right. Next time I won't do it.
You can't leave the audience out. We need to know.
No, look.
No.
Conversation changed. People want to talk about Donald Trump's tax plan. All right, I have to say, I watched the unveiling today. Are you choking yourself?
No, I'm not.
She's hanging herself.
I'm not. I wasn't. I'm listening to you because it doesn't, and you know that
spasm.
for a fact. I have a pinched nerve. And that I'm seeking medical treatment. I want to hear about this tax plan because I worry that Donald Trump is turning into Elizabeth Warren.
Very interesting you say that. Everything that Donald's talking about, others have spoken about repatriation, upwards of $3 trillion of offshore money that needs to come back, lowering monies and taxes for everybody. I personally believe that the federal government has enough of our money and they're not a good steward of that money. When you're looking at making sure some people don't pay taxes, yeah, it all makes sense. But what I think he's forgetting is that there are others that need to have their say, the House and Senate in particular. And if it's any indication what they're doing now, it's going to be a problem. But I think it's a good starting point.
Okay, so here's part of what he said today that really resonated with the crowd where he was. He said, look, I don't like the way our government is spending our money. I mean, look at the $750,000, although he called it $1 million, soccer field that they wanted to build at Guantanamo Bay. He said, who thinks that that's a good idea?
Well, they built it.
Right.
I've been to Gitmo.
2012.
Have you played soccer there? It's lovely.
I can tell you
nice and smooth.
And he says he wants to renegotiate our military deals. He says we protect everybody. We protect North Korea, Saudi Arabia. He said they make billions of dollars. They need to give some of that to us. There are some things that people really get in all of this. And then he said there would be a group of people, low-income people, who would have zero income tax, and that he would raise the taxes on the wealthiest. Now, some of that, you're right, sounds like a very strong platform if you're a Democrat. Some of it, but not all of it.
Corporate tax, too. He said he's going to lower corporate tax, which is great.
Makes sense.
Which is great.
An incentive for businesses.
Repatriate.
But really, what's the big difference in his plan than any other Republican that's running?
A lot of it's been talked about. He's just lowering the rates, consolidating, simplifying the tax code. Everybody wants that.
Yeah.
Problem is you can't get consensus because you don't have the presidency and you don't have a supermajority or Democrats in the case right now who want to go along and help out in those instances.
But what about this idea? He's none of those things that you just mentioned in terms of a politician. He's a deal maker.
Well, he's going to have to wheel and deal and get those votes.
And he thinks he can do it. He thinks
Good
that
luck.
he can save 20% on what we spend as a government just by redoing some of the deals, like the military deals. Kennedy's looking at me like I'm crazy.
No, I don't think you're crazy at all. I think that's actually, I'm surprised it doesn't come up more during presidential elections because, you know, we talk about having the strongest military on earth, but we spend more on our military than the next 7 countries combined. Of course, everyone knows how strong our military is, but why are we in South Korea? Why are we in Germany? Why are we in Japan? These places are not going to devolve into civil war if we pull out our bases. And if we're not going to, he's absolutely right. Ask those countries to chip in. Why are we protecting them and acting as their military?
They want
Thank
us
you for
there.
saying South Korea.
They've asked us to be there.
Then they can pay for part of that, can't they?
Can certainly contribute. That's why Japan is actually trying to increase their military dollars because they're recognizing that the threats are changing and emerging.
So does this fall in that box like illegal immigration, Andrea? Is this one of those things that Donald Trump brings up that you said, oh, we've heard this from everybody, but it gets an exclamation point and some quotes around it because he's a salesman?
Well, not only that, he touches on something that irks both parties. So when he talks about the fact that we're wasting money, giving it to countries like Saudi Arabia, which President Obama did 2 weeks ago, he basically said we're going to give the Saudis, I believe it was an upwards of 100 million at least, to fight ISIS in Yemen. We're giving the Saudis that money. When the Saudis have not taken one refugee. I'm sorry, but these Gulf states need to step up at bare minimum. And they should be stepping up to pay for a military presence if they've asked that we've been there. I mean, Donald Trump makes a lot of sense on this. The one area, to answer your question, Ainsley, where I do think he differs from other Republicans, is he's espousing this more populist, I'm going to go after Wall Street hedge funds. And even though if you ask some of the hedge fund guys, they'll say, well, this doesn't really, what he says doesn't really make sense. It's very tough to stand up if you're opposing Donald Trump or even an Elizabeth Warren and say, you know what, I'm going to take the side of the big hedge fund guys. It's very tough to run against that. So again, Donald Trump, I think, boxes somebody in. with a very populist position.
But Republicans have done a horrible job of making the economic argument in their own favor. And I think someone should come out right now. You should have a libertarian Austrian school economist come out and say, you know, this is why you have carried interest. Because they're a pinata, they're a punching bag right now. But someone needs to lay out the unintended consequences.
You know what, though? It's funny. I think that's the problem with the other Republicans, is when they start to talk about carried interest and all these other things, people's eyes start to glaze over. I mean, Jeb Bush gave his economic rollout, what was it, last Wednesday or the Wednesday before? I mean, I don't even remember because it was so unmemorable. I think people are sick and tired of listening to the details and getting bogged down. And even though Donald Trump, people give him, a lot of heat
really
for not
good
giving
at
details.
Though? Carly Fiorina, she's incredible at giving concise, detail-filled nuggets that are easy for people to process. I mean, she's actually someone who uses specifics to her advantage better than any other candidate.
That's why she did so well in the second debate.
That's
I agree with you. Yeah. So, Andrea, going back to the Saudi Arabia deal, who is the one candidate that won't be giving money to foreign countries? Because how do we even know that they're going to be spending that money on what they say they will?
Well, if you listen to the last debate, it seemed that Trump, Rand Paul, to some degree, I think Ted Cruz, we didn't talk a lot about it, have stood up and said, what are we doing overseas? And also have made comments like, if Vladimir Putin's going to be the one to help defeat ISIS, then we should help him out. Chris Christie has come out and made a comment about not wanting to nation build, but the others not so much. I mean, the others have taken a position where they believe we should be taking the refugees. I haven't heard, other than Donald Trump and Rand Paul, any candidate put pressure on the Gulf states to take these refugees in, because they say this is your problem. Yeah, we didn't help it in Syria, but to think that somehow there wouldn't be a refugee crisis in Syria if the United States hadn't drawn that red line is just ludicrous. I mean, Obama's Arab Spring has destabilized so many countries. It's exactly what Putin was talking about earlier.
Maybe these Gulf states are smart in that sense, because they don't want to spend any money fighting ISIS.
They are.
They'll sit back long enough for the U.S. to do it, and they don't want to take any refugees.
So what does that say about us?
Well,
that
we're rudderless. We're kind of
helping
drifting
everyone.
from conflict to conflict.
So Bridget 11 writes on the live chat, I like Dr. Ben Carson's plan for taxes, getting back to that if 10% is good enough for the Lord, 10% is good enough for the government. The low income will only pay 10% of their income, and the wealthy will give 10% of their income. That would be a huge tax cut for some people, and then others of the wealthy don't pay very much at all. What are your thoughts?
Well, bottom line is these are all proposals, and it's a good starting point. You need to start somewhere. The final plan that Donald's putting through, it's not going to be the final plan if, in fact, it moves forward and if, in fact, he's the president. But I believe the federal government is too much of our money right now.
Amen.
And the code, one of the things I liked about what Donald said was, listen, it's going to be simpler, fairer, and more transparent, and we're going to just throw away the tax code. I love that. I love all that stuff.
Listen to the way you delivered it too, Senator. I mean, that's in a simplistic way that everyone can understand. It's powerful. It's not mired in the details, so everyone's falling asleep, and that's what Trump does. But I am glad he finally put a little bit of specifics behind
has to, because the polling is going down. People appreciate all the effort, all the energy, but they're saying, okay, now we need you to act presidential, and we need you to give us specifics.
Well, he actually has specifics in some of his books.
Yeah, but I mean, he laid them out today. One of the other things he said was that getting tax reform right will set everything else up
I think
for
there's
success.
some
he said
truth to
because
that.
people have a double situation. I'm paraphrasing him here. It's that they're paying too much, they feel, some of them, and that they don't understand where the money is going. He said, and I don't understand where the money is going either, because when you look at it, you don't get it.
I can tell you firsthand it's being wasted. The federal government is a terrible steward of our money, and they just want more and more. They're like drunken sailors.
That's why
take.
$500 million to train 5
ISIS
anti-ISIS fighters.
And that's why
it is unheard of, the incompetence.
That's why the voters.
I don't know that it's unheard of. It just hasn't been reported.
Okay, unprecedented. Let's say
I think
$100 million per one fighter.
Than we would ever find.
This is
palatable.
exactly why voters want anti-establishment. They want someone to get in there and wipe the slate clean, and they don't want the waste, because we all work our tails off. You know, we all wake up early in the morning to get your kids to school, to get to work, to put food on the table, and then when you hear about all the waste in Washington, it's just ridiculous that we're all working so hard.
And that your kids aren't going to be as well off as you are. I mean, that's a really scary thought.
It is.
What are our children inheriting? What are we teaching
18 trillion.
them?
That's what they're inheriting.
19 now. It's 19 trillion.
19.
And Senator, you bring up a good point. I mean, it's that distrust that people have in government. They just don't trust.
I mean, Senator Coburn had a fantastic black book of all the fraud, waste, abuse, stuff that we could do. We could do it tomorrow and save a few $1 trillion, and they don't do it.
It's bipartisan.
It's common sense,
because they're all in Washington together.
But even the duplicate programs that are in there, and that's one of the. It's not just shrimp on treadmills. It's some of the other things that there's 17 programs that perform the exact same function.
Streamline,
how is that
consolidate.
not wasteful?
Let's go. Common sense.
All right. Great participation today on the live chat. We appreciate it, everybody. We'll see you back here for the TV version of us at noon Eastern. Senator, good to have you along.
Good to see you all.
Bye.
Thank you.